We are set for a big week of decision-making over the upcoming Ashes Tour. Yesterday, the England players were presented with the proposed conditions for the series in Australia this winter. And today, the ECB said the board will meet this week to decide whether the tour will go ahead. Australia has some of the strictest COVID-19 protocols in place in the world at the moment, with the first test due to be played at the start of December. Patrick Geary has this report.
Away from
For English cricketers, nowhere's further from home than Australia, where you've always got company, just not many friends. A hostile place to put an anti-COVID bubble then, so could it all go pop? The England and Wales Cricket Board will decide this week if they'll send a team to contest the Ashes. The players are considering the plans. Some have concerns over quarantine arrangements and whether their families can travel. With the T20 World Cup beforehand, some could be away from home for 4 months. The ECB said they were talking to Cricket Australia and their own players with welfare in mind. They added in a statement, the board will decide whether the conditions are sufficient for the tour to go ahead and enable the selection of a squad befitting a series of this significance. Last week, Joe Root admitted there's much to weigh up.
It's really important that the guys really do get the opportunity to think that through and do what's best for their mental well-being. A number of other factors that they will have to figure in, and away tour to Australia is one of those occasions that you're just desperate to be on. Look at the position I'm in my career. It could be the last opportunity I get to go.
Australia has some of the strictest anti-COVID rules in the world, with different restrictions for each of its states, prone to sudden changes to stem even small outbreaks. The vaccination programme has been running some way behind the UK's, but is catching up. So much is uncertain, but their cricket captain isn't a man for grey areas.
Well, the Ashes are going ahead. The first test on December 8, and whether Joe's here or not, to be honest with you. So they all want to come, there's no doubt about that, and they're trying to get themselves the best possible conditions that they can get. But at the end of the day, we all are, and we don't want to give them poor conditions because we're going to be in the same boat as them.
The Stratheden sails with what we all hope will prove to be a lot of trouble for Australia.
Australia has always been an inconvenient place for Englishmen to play cricket. Ashes tours used to involve long voyages and many months away from home. Getting there is easier now, but what about staying there? For this generation of tourists, is this journey to the other side of the world a trip too far? Patrick Geary, BBC News.
Well, I've been speaking to Adam Collins, who is an Australian cricket journalist here in the UK. He has been following all the twists and turns in the lead up to the Ashes series. So what does he think about this latest move from the ECB?
There needed to be some strong arming. There needed to be some strong negotiating tactics used throughout the course of this process. And look, maybe this latest statement is simply an extension of that, and they want to make sure they get the absolute best deal before signing the dotted line. But look, I also appreciate that players might be sitting around after their season and seeing reports from Australia that look fairly grim. There was a Sheffield Shield, a domestic game called off last week in Brisbane, which is where the first test is meant to be. So if I were watching those reports, I'd be anxious as well. However, the goalposts have changed in the last few days. The advice is better, and the vaccination rate in Australia is going through the roof at a rate of knots, which means that when they're scheduled to start the Ashes series in Brisbane on the 8th of December, things should be, certainly the planning that's been done by the government is that things will be fine. However, I appreciate that it's not always felt that way. As recently as a month ago, you can understand why the England players would have had a degree of trepidation. Now, I think it's just about them making sure they squeeze the sponge to the extent they can through negotiations to get every last drop out of it before they decide to agree formally to come.
Finally, Adam, if you had a hunch as to whether this will go ahead or not, the Ashes Tour?
In order for the Ashes series not to go ahead would require effectively a boycott from the ECB, not in those stronger terms, I'd imagine, but a postponement, which in the current scheduling arrangement that we have, I just can't see that happening. There's too much on the line financially. The Ashes is effectively an industry inside of cricket. There is so much on the line for both boards, the reciprocity of their agreements, the commercial arrangements that underpin all of that with broadcast and beyond. I just can't see a scenario where there's a complete pull that. Will individual players arrive at a view, even with all the positive developments I've referred to already, will there be still some senior players that say, oh, I just don't fancy it? Will they want to do any version of quarantine after being double vaccinated? Some might arrive at the view that that's too high a bar for them to clear after playing cricket in these conditions since July 2020. But I wouldn't doubt for a heartbeat that the vast majority of players, if presented with a modest quarantine arrangement in a country that is opening up versus staying at home, I'd expect the vast majority of them will take box A.